research is about the ethics of deliberately destroying human embryos, which are human beings at the earliest stages of development, to produce stem cells. That's how you get the stem cells. It's like if you harvest the lungs and the heart out of an adult, you'd kill the adult. That's the same thing that happens when you take the stem cells out of an embryo. It destroys the embryo. So the threshold question is whether it is right to kill members of a certain class of humans, those in the embryonic stage of development, to benefit others. So in that sense, our debate isn't actually about stem cell research. No one would actually object to the use of stem cells if they could be obtained from non-embryonic sources. In fact, there are many alternative sources today. In fact, most of the advancement that has taken place in science has been to these alternative sources, adult stem cells and processes known as induced pluripotent stem cells, which I can talk a bit about later if you want. But nevertheless, from my own experience and personal experience, you would know that sometimes if you're religious and you talk about these sorts of things in the public square, people tend to propose that it is only on the basis of our religious faith that we believe that the embryo is a human being from conception. And that if you use your reason, that you'll come up with some alternative, better explanation. I want to destroy that argument because it is completely false. I get this a lot because I organise the events in Sydney, the Theology on Tap events, and we had one a couple of months ago on this same issue. And I got criticised constantly for explaining this position, which is not based on faith, it's based on sound science and philosophy. I gave a talk at the New South Wales Right to Life conference on this issue on embryonic stem cell research and life issues, so if any of you have any questions on that, I can do that in the Q&A, but I'll have to wrap up this section for now. But I believe that to win this culture war with the broader culture, we need to grapple and to wrestle and to engage with the culture on its own terms, with reason, to be able to defend human life and bring about a culture that respects and fosters the intrinsic goodness of bodily life and health, especially to the most innocent and vulnerable. It was funny, actually, as a side note, while I was doing work at the UN recently, in March, I was chatting with this young lady outside one of the General Assembly room, and we were just chatting for a while, a couple of minutes, and we had a good conversation. And I said, "Oh, who are you here representing?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm the pro-choice youth representative from Southern California, and I work for the National Abortion Rights Activist League, and I'm also an employee of Planned Parenthood." I was like, "Cool, we're going to get on well." And she asked me who I was, and I'm like, "Oh, Catholic Family and Human Rights Institute, Pro-Life, Pro-Family Coalition," like, but no, it was great. I ended up, we actually got on very well. We chatted for about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And we had a really, really good conversation. She first started off talking, basically saying how, I said, "Oh, so what are your views on, I was trying to be as subtle as I can on abortion." We seem to have that in common. And she was like, "Oh yeah, no, I think it's a woman's right to choose." And I said, "Okay, so what do you understand the human embryo to be?" And she's like, "Oh, well, the embryo is a clump of cells that's part of the mother." I was like, "A clump of cells are part of the mother." Okay, I was like, so usually though, when we call something as being a part of something, it's usually a functional part. So your hands are part of your body because it performs a function of the body, and your legs are part of your body because it performs a function of the body. I said, I think the embryo is a bit different because it's not a functional part of the body of the woman. It's actually an independent cell with its own DNA integrally organised to develop by itself. And she was like, "Oh." But she was like, "Oh, okay, I never really heard that before." And we started chatting a bit more, and after a while, after a few hours, she was convinced that the embryo was human life from the beginning of conception. However, you can get people that far, but then it's a different thing to say whether that human life is worthy of respect or becomes a person. So usually if you debate these sorts of things in pro-life things, people will either deny that it's human life, or they'll accept that it's human life but then deny it's a person. So there's two kind of pronged attack that they usually take. But given a bit of time, it might have been a bit better, but we've kept in contact since. But it just shows how if you talk to people calmly about these sorts of things, you can actually gain development in these significant issues. So in that sense, we young people have to be, in the words of Pope John Paul II, a sign of contradiction to the culture in modern times. We have to be willing to stand up and call what is wrong, wrong. We cannot, for the sake of civility, muffle our voices or be indifferent to the taking of innocent human life, which is always and in every case an absolute moral wrong. We must hold up our opponents to the test of rational scrutiny, and let me tell you, ours is far more superior, far more reasonable, and far more compelling than any other philosophy out there. You don't have to be afraid about defending the Catholic faith in public from philosophy or natural law, things like that. It's very sound. So in that sense, the ultimate weapon that will win this war is ultimately our witness, our martyrdom, our sanctity, our sainthood. It's what we're called to do. And as many saints down the ages have said, we're not called to be successful, we're called to be faithful. That reminds me, it's time for me to tell you the rest of the story about Franz. Germany invaded Austria in 1938. Unlike most of his neighbours, Franz refused to cooperate in any way with the new nationalist social regime because he considered Hitler to be an enemy of Christ and the Church. For 5 years he waged a personal campaign of moral resistance, but finally he was arrested for refusing an order to enlist in the German army. While awaiting his sentence, many people, including his family and his local priest, urged him to pay lip service to the regime and thereby spare his life. Franz wouldn't do it. So 66 summers ago, on August 9th, 1943, Franz died on a Nazi guillotine. Today we remember him as Blessed Franz Jagerstatter, a martyr for the truth that a Catholic can win the culture war through the total giving of oneself. Blessed Franz wrote beautiful letters to his wife from prison. In one of them he talked about the great martyrs of the Church. He wrote, "If we hope to reach our goal someday, then we too must become heroes of the faith. For as long as we fear men more than God, we will never make the grade. The important thing is that we do not let a single day go by in vain without putting it to good use for eternity." Be not afraid. Be not afraid. Join Blessed Franz, myself and hundreds of thousands of other young Catholics in the task commissioned to us by Pope Benedict in the World Youth Day events, to be a generation of apostles, to bring the world to Christ. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was great. Now we're into the real nitty gritty. It's not over for yet, Pat. We've got question and answers time, and I think we've got quite a bit of time tonight. So start firing away with questions and answers.